Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2022 Independence Bowl matchup between the Louisiana Raging Cajuns and the Houston Cougars, two teams that some might say have disappointed a bit in the 2022 season, but both teams are definitely in a similar situation heading into this bowl game. It should make for a good matchup. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with their team trends. Louisiana beat Texas State 41-13. Was the final score there. So a dominant win to finish out the regular season for Louisiana, which, yeah, definitely a roller coaster every year for Louisiana, which, I mean, this is a team that just lost their head coach, Billy Napier. He took off to Florida, and so it's obviously a first season with a new head coach, and so we kind of expected this to potentially be a rebuild season for Louisiana, but 6 wins is obviously the worst this team has been since 2017, so it's been a while since this team, but they still made it to a bowl game, which is obviously a good thing in what could be considered a rebuilding year. But as for Houston, this team was a bit more disappointing in my opinion. They lost to Tulsa to finish out the regular season 30-37. This was a team that, talent-wise, especially on offense, offensively, this team is very much able to be a potential national contender, you could say. I mean, we saw Cincinnati run the American Athletic and get to the college football playoff last season. I didn't know if Houston would be an undefeated team this season, but I figured 10-11 wins was potentially a pretty reasonable bet for the Cougars this season. But this offense has been great, but it's just the defensive side of the ball that's really come back to bite the Cougars this season, and we'll get into more about that in just a second. But Houston finished out the season at 7-5. I mean, not a bad season, but definitely I feel like the ceiling was higher for Houston, and they didn't quite reach their full potential. Games will be on Friday, December 23rd in Shreveport, Louisiana. Your kickoff is 3 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going with Houston by 7, so the Cougars are favored by a touchdown here. Over-under is 57.5, and the FPI is also going with Houston here, 64.6%. Series history, Houston leads at 6-3. Louisiana won the last game, which was back in 2006. So we've seen these two teams play each other a couple of times, not really any time recent though. Stat comparison, Louisiana is 67th in points per game. They're 42nd in points allowed, 70th in passers a game, 72nd in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, they're 61st in passing, 53rd in rushing. So, yeah, you got a team here that's, I mean, they're decent on both sides of the ball. Defensively, you could say that they're better. They're allowing an average of 23 points a game, which isn't bad. On offense, though, I mean, the quarterback situation hasn't been great for Louisiana. You got, of course, Woolridge, who's been the main starter at quarterback, but the last couple of games of the regular season, it was Chandler Fields. But yeah, otherwise, Houston defensively, not a bad team. I mean, yeah, their defense is going to have to come to play in this matchup as they're taking on one of the top offenses in the country in Houston. Houston is 13th in points per game. They're getting an average of 37 points a game. So once again, offense is not an issue for Houston. This is a team, you got Clayton Tune, who has put up over 3,800 yards on the season, 37 touchdowns, over 10 picks. I mean, we knew last season he had a great year in 2021, and that was a big part of the reason why Houston was so good last year. And so him coming back into 2022, you also had Nathaniel Dell coming back, the top receiver. I mean, there is plenty of reason to believe that Houston was going to be a potential contender in the 2022 season, but in the end, it just didn't happen. And once again, the defensive side of the ball is a big that's the side of the ball to blame here, because this offense is doing a lot right. It's just defensively, they just have been allowing way too many points. But I mean, you look at this offense, yeah, Clayton Tune, his stats have been great. He's also the top rusher on this team with nearly 500 rush yards and 5 touchdowns. And of course, yeah, Nathaniel Dell's the top in receiving, 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns on the season. So offensively, this team has been great this season. They're 110th in points allowed, allowing an average of 34 a game. They're 7th in pass yards a game. They're 74th in rush yards. And then for yards allowed, 129th in passing defense. That's one of the main areas where Houston has had trouble. And then they're 48th in rushing defense. The rushing defense hasn't been terrible. It's just the passing defense that has really held this team back. Recent matchups, Louisiana, they beat Texas State 41-13. Once again, that was a solid win to finish out the regular season. They got blown out to Florida State the week before, 17-49. Turns out the Seminoles have had a good season. They beat Georgia Southern the week before, 36-17. So you can see that inconsistency there. I mean, they were no match against Florida State, but they blew out Georgia Southern the week before the game and then blew out Texas State the week after. They lost to Troy 17-23, also lost to Southern Miss 24-39. As for Houston, they lost to Tulsa 30-37, beat East Carolina 42-3. That was a very impressive win there. They beat Temple 43-36, lost SMU 63-77. That is not a basketball score. That is a college football score. 63-77. Houston lost that game. I mean, for SMU being on the other side of that, winning a game and still allowing 63 points, yeah, that's not a college football game you're going to see too often. And then they beat South Florida in the late parts of October, 42-27. Your key points for this one: Louisiana 6-6. They've been inconsistent down the stretch, but this team does show potential. They've shown potential at points in this season, and quite honestly, I feel like that relates to both teams here. You got Houston, who's been very inconsistent as well, but they're definitely a very talented team, especially on offense. Once again, it's just the defensive side of the ball that's really held Houston back this season. But Louisiana, clearly in a rebuild phase, new head coach. It makes sense that this wasn't a great season to Louisiana standards, but wouldn't be surprised in a couple of years we see this team right around 10 wins once again. But they've also won 3 straight bowl games. That is something to keep in mind. Looking at the success of teams in bowl games, Louisiana has been pretty successful in recent bowl matchups. But as for Houston, this team, it's been roller coaster of a season for the Cougars. Offensively, got outstanding talent. Mentioned Clayton Tune. I mean, this is a talented team. Nathaniel Dell. I mean, that's why Houston had such high expectations going into the 2022 season, was because of how much talent and experience they had returning on offense. But the defensive side of the ball has just been a rough season for this team, and it's held them back. I mean, it's tough to average 35 points allowed per game and try to still win 8 or 9 football games plus. It just doesn't work that way. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Louisiana and Houston coming up here in the Independence Bowl. I'll be going with Houston win this one 38-27. This one, I mean, in the end, I feel like Houston is just the better team. And Louisiana, it's bowl season, so we've seen some crazy, and we can see some crazy things happen. But I feel like Houston, there's a talent gap here for sure. The Cougars are the more talented team. It's just a matter of whether or not they can score enough points to the point where even if they allow 20 to 30 points or so, they can still win. And I do see this game potentially becoming a shootout if Houston wins this one. I think Louisiana's got a good chance to score 20 to 30 in this game. And so I do think they score 27 here. But yeah, Houston's defense definitely, if they can have a strong game, Houston's offense, I'm pretty sure, is going to get it done. If their defense can hold Louisiana to even below 20 points, I feel like Houston's got this game in the bag. So I'll say Houston 60%, over under 57.5. I'm taking the over for this one for sure, and Houston to cover the spread in the end. If you think Louisiana's going to win this game, then it's a safe bet to take the under. But I mean, with Houston win this game, more than likely it's going to go over, and I could see Houston scoring even more than 38, to be honest. I could see them in the 40s potentially if everything goes right. So I got Houston covering the spread in the end. But yeah, this is definitely a very interesting matchup. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this one, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.